Dust rose like ghosts from the dirt road as the sun melted behind the horizon, painting the sky in burnt orange and crimson. The church stood small but proud at the edge of the prairie, its wooden walls weathered from years of wind and whispers. The people of Dry Creek gathered outside in their Sunday best, hats tipped low, voices hushed with a strange mix of curiosity and judgment. They weren't here just for a wedding. They were here for a spectacle. Everyone had heard the rumor. The bride couldn't hear a word. Some said the rancher had lost his mind. Others said it was charity, pity dressed up as love. But one thing was certain. No one expected her to walk down that road with grace. Then she appeared. A woman in a simple white dress stepped into view, her veil fluttering softly in the warm wind. Her name was Clara Mayfield, tall, slender, and heartbreakingly beautiful in a way that felt unintentional. In her hands, she carried a bouquet of wildflowers she had picked herself that morning. She walked alone, each step light but deliberate, her eyes steady on the small wooden church. The crowd shifted. Some women whispered behind gloved hands. A man snickered. "A deaf bride? Guess she won't hear him when he says I do," someone muttered. Laughter followed, cruel and sharp as thorns. Clara didn't hear it, but she felt it. The vibration of laughter, the shifting of bodies, the mocking rhythm of lips moving in silent ridicule. Her heart tightened, but she kept walking. She had learned long ago that silence could be its own kind of strength. Inside the church, James Rowe waited by the altar. He was the kind of man whose presence filled a room even when he didn't speak. Tall, broad-shouldered, sunburned from years of labor on his ranch, with eyes that carried both storms and kindness. When he first met Clara, she'd been sitting under a pecan tree sketching horses in a worn notebook. He had spoken to her, unaware she was deaf, and when she hadn't answered, he thought she was ignoring him. But when she finally looked up and smiled, softly, shyly, something inside him shifted. He saw not her silence but her strength, the kind of strength that doesn't need words to be understood. Now, as she reached the church steps, the laughter outside echoed in the wind. She glanced at him through the doorway, unsure. James walked toward her, his boots crunching in the dust, and reached out his hand. Without a word, he signed, "You're safe now." Clara's lips trembled into a smile as she placed her hand in his. The ceremony began. The preacher spoke, though Clara couldn't hear his words, but she watched every expression, every gesture. James had learned to sign some words over the past months. He stumbled, his fingers awkward but heartfelt as he signed. "I promise to protect you, to hear you when the world won't." Clara blinked back tears. She signed in return, "And I will love you, even in silence." When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, the crowd clapped politely, some mockingly, others reluctantly. But the moment James kissed her, something changed. The wind picked up, rustling the wildflowers in her hair, carrying with it a quiet that silenced even the whispers. There was something sacred in that moment, something words could never describe. Later, as the guests gathered outside, one of the ranch hands sneered, "Guess you'll need to hire someone to talk for her." "Boss." Laughter followed again, cruel and loud. James turned, his jaw tightening. He walked to Clara, who stood with her bouquet, confused by the noise but aware of the tension. He took her hand, raised it, and said firmly, "She doesn't need to hear you to understand the world. Better than any of you ever." "Will." The laughter died instantly. The only sound left was the wind whistling through the prairie grass. Clara looked at him, her eyes glistening. For the first time that day, she felt truly seen, not as someone broken, but as someone whole. And in that silence, a love story began that no one in Dry Creek would ever forget. Weeks passed, and the gossip didn't stop. People talked behind closed doors, at the saloon, even in church pews. They said James had made a mistake, that Clara would never fit in, never contribute, never belong. But James didn't care. He watched Clara every morning, standing on the porch as the sun rose, sketching the horses running through the mist. He had never known peace like that. She brought calm to his chaos, light to his long days of dust and sweat. And even though she couldn't hear, she somehow listened better than anyone else ever had. Then came the storm. One late afternoon, the sky turned black, clouds rolling like angry beasts. Lightning split the horizon. The ranch hands scrambled, shouting, trying to herd the cattle before the flash flood hit. James ran into the field, yelling orders, rain pounding against his hat. He didn't notice Clara running after him, barefoot, clutching her sketchbook. She had seen something he couldn't hear. The sound of breaking wood, The creek near the fence had overflowed, and the bridge was collapsing. One wrong move and the herd and James would be swept away. She couldn't call out to him, so she ran, faster than she ever had before, waving her arms wildly. James turned just as the bridge gave way behind him. He barely jumped clear before it was torn apart by the current. For a moment everything was chaos, rain, mud, terrified animals, shouting men. But Clara didn't stop. She moved among the cattle, calm and sure, guiding them with gestures, her silent presence strangely commanding. The men watched, stunned. She didn't need words. She used her eyes, her hands, her courage, and somehow the animals obeyed. By the time the storm passed, not a single life had been lost. When they returned to the ranch, drenched and exhausted, the same men who had mocked her now stared at her in awe. One whispered, "She saved us." James turned to them and said, "She saved me." Then louder, for everyone to hear, he added, "She is better than all of you." Because while you were busy talking, she was listening to the world, to the danger to her heart. No one laughed after that. That night, as the storm clouds cleared, Clara sat on the porch, sketching the stars reflected in the puddles. James came beside her, holding a lantern. He signed, "You spoke today." She smiled softly, signing back without sound. He kissed her forehead and whispered, "The world doesn't deserve your silence, Clara, but I'm grateful I get to share it." And as the wind carried the faint scent of rain and wildflowers, the town of Dry Creek finally learned a lesson that words could never teach. Sometimes, the loudest voice is the one that never speaks at all. End note for viewers. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more inspiring, emotional tales that remind us what real strength, love, and humanity look like. Your support helps us bring more stories like Clara and James's to life, stories that speak to the soul, even in silence. Would you like me to format this into a YouTube narration script with dialogue pacing, emotional cues, and voiceover notes? It'll make it perfect for storytelling or short film style content.